5, and then there's some even in the back yet. It's just amazing. They have these 2-mile long trains there, and that's about as exciting as it gets. And I've been married for 24 years, and my wife's Karen, and her parents are in the Whitewater, Elbing, Kansas area, so we're close to her family. And then I have 2 daughters, Anna, she's 19, and Clara, who is 15, and in 9th grade with a lot of personality. Both of them have a lot of personality. And my claim to fame today is kind of exciting. How do you get your girls interested in missions? So I've asked Clara, you want to be a missionary? And she'll say, Dad, you ruined that for me. I don't want to be a missionary. And Anna, she's also kind of said, I don't want to be a missionary, And so today she lives in Siloam Springs, Arkansas at John Brown University. And today, for the first time, she is making a missions presentation at her church about missions and Japan specifically. And so that's kind of a cool thing when your own kid is doing a missions presentation. And so that's kind of a big deal. So I'm praying for her, Anna, as she's speaking to a bunch of kids today about missions. So she wanted to see my presentation. I gave it to her, but she goes, Dad, she'll do her own. So it'll be exciting to see how that all works out. So, and do I have to turn this thing on? Down. There we go. And my name, when I got to Japan, Stace is a hard one, and so a Japanese person converted to Japanese and pronounced it Steidu, and I went with that for about a year, and then they kept laughing at my name, and they found out that means throwing away trash, Steidu. So I changed my name in Japanese to Suteisu, so that it was more clear, and people would stop laughing at me about my name. And so that's how it's pronounced in Japanese. Darwin is my name in Japanese, Darwin. And so everybody laughs at it when you have a name like Darwin. And worldwide, everybody connects it to evolution. And so Darwin, so they have shows in Japan about Darwin, and it's animal shows. And my wife is Karen, and that's a hard one to say in Japanese, Karen, and then Anna and Kurara. So that's how you say it in Japanese. And we're with Send International. Send is out of Detroit, Michigan area. There's about 450 missionaries worldwide. And we're in Ukraine, Russia, Alaska, Europe, Philippines, Taiwan. And the Taiwan thing, just to mention, is a big deal. China's got their ships around Taiwan. And it's always been said that China could take over Taiwan in 45 minutes if they wanted to. And so we've got missionaries there. It's a concern. We have an Asia hub right there in Taiwan, and so we're concerned about the safety of the missionaries there, but not just the missionaries, but the millions of Taiwanese people who live there. They don't want to be a part of China, and China wants them to be in their territory. So it's a interesting political space right now. I'm hoping for peace over there. And so how did we end up in Japan? Well, I went to Grace University in Omaha, Nebraska, and went to my first mission trip was to Mali, West Africa, and I was ready to be a missionary to Africa. I really loved Africa. In 1991, I went there for 2 months, and God had different plans for me, and I got a invitation from Dave Lowen in 97 to go to Japan. And so I accepted that and raised money and was able to get to Japan. And so since 97, I've been interested in Japan. And then I got married in 98. And then we went on a vision trip together to get my wife interested in Japan. And she loves Japan now too. And so we've been serving in Japan long-term, short-term, for about 18, 19 years, depending how you want to count the years. Home services in there as well. And Japan's a very a very strategically located country. It's close to Russia and South and North Korea. And North Korea keeps lobbing missiles over Japan, and that makes them mad. And so it's close to Taiwan and China as well. And when you fly to Japan, you don't go over the ocean through Hawaii. You go up and over Alaska, just because it's the shortest distance because of the curvature of the earth. And so you go up through Alaska. And if you put Japan like in America, We lived in Tokyo, but up north it's as cold as Minnesota. Down south it's as warm as Mexico, and just a wide. There's thousands of islands if you count them all, but there's 5 main islands that we talk about in Japan. But I pretty much never left the. I don't think I no I ever visited. I never left the island of where Tokyo is. I never got to any of those other. Everything takes money to travel, and so we stayed pretty much in the Tokyo area. So this is not Hebron, Nebraska. And so when I moved to Kansas, I enjoyed the big sunsets and sunrises. And this picture just shows how Tokyo just goes on. And you just look up at the sky, but you never see a sunrise. And so I really enjoyed them here. But you also get used to the convenience of having millions of people around you. We were always close to a grocery store. You always try to be there. They always say you're about 5 minutes away from a convenience store in Tokyo. So you always you forget something, it's easy to find a vending machine or something nearby that can do it. In Kansas, the closest grocery store is 14 miles away, and you guys understand that kind of stuff around here. So, but Japan's the one country where the population is decreasing because of social economic things, that they're not having families. And so we've always said for years 125 million people in Japan, but just recently it went below 125 million. And so they're projecting, the demise of Japan, that'll go away, but that'll be a long time from now. But the population is just going down. But you take Japan as kind of just the size of Montana, and then 70% of Montana is mountains. And you take half of the U.S. population, put them in Montana, and then 70% of Montana is mountains. So that's why it's so congested, and just a really congested city, and the country is everywhere. You just go out in the country, people joke about, we're in the country now, and the only difference between being in the country is that the trains come every 15 minutes instead of every 3 minutes, like you are when you're downtown. The Japanese yen is what they use there, and it's very tied to the American dollar, but it's been varying. The worst was 78 yen to the dollar. Now it was up to 150 yen to the dollar. Now it's about in the middle, 134. I've been serving as a treasurer, so those yen rates make a big difference when you're bringing $250,000 over. Those yen rates make a big difference, and it's kind of like selling corn or beans here, farmers. We're really good at not hitting the best time to do it. So I've learned to not gamble with God's money, and if we need yen, we move it over to $250,000, and whatever yen rate you get, that's what you get, and that's just the way it goes. So the food in Japan is really good. Not like here. It's a little bit different. You got a lot of Chinese input from, so you got ramen and gyoza, and you get a lot of seaweed. My daughters love seaweed. I mean, Japanese will eat rice and seaweed every day in their diet, and we would eat at least rice once a day, and most Japanese would do the same. And then everything is a lot of soy sauce. So we had a new missionary come to Japan and found out after they raised all their support they didn't disclose that they were allergic to soy sauce. Well, they didn't last very long. I think after 3 months, we had to send this person home because soy sauce is in everything. She just couldn't eat anything, so it was kind of rough. Japanese have a lot of noodles, different kinds of noodles, and cold noodles, hot noodles, curry and rice from India, and a lot of church potlucks are curry and rice, and hot noodles, cold noodles, and different flavors. The pizza's got broccoli and corn and mayonnaise and fish on it, and so when we'd order pizza, we made sure we got the cheese pizza or just the meat, pepperoni or whatever, but it was $40-50 for one piece of pizza, so 30 to 40, something like that, for one piece of pizza. So we didn't get pizza all that often, but we never got this fancy stuff because it was nasty. Nobody wants to eat mayonnaise. And so In Japan, they've got a lot of different phrases. I like the Japanese language in the sense that they have these idioms. And this one is kuki yomenai. And so you can't read the air. Japanese will look at somebody and say, oh, that person can't read the air. And it means literally you can't read the air, which literally means you walk into a building and you've got to be able to know the mood of the room. And that's a universal quality. You got to know the quality, the air. And so every time I go home, I say, Lord, let me be able to read the air when I get home. You know, if Karen's happy, everybody's happy. If she ain't happy, you better take out the garbage right away, or whatever she tells you to do. And so life principle is read the air, because if you don't, you're in trouble. And another one is just in Japan, the language barrier is huge. You try to read, and I gave up writing Japanese. I can read most of it. There's so many different alphabets and everything that it was very challenging. And so Japanese is one of the barriers to doing ministry is the language, and trying to do it in Japanese. And then it's a very complex language. And then the other challenge is also just breaking in and being part of them, accepted in their group. It's such a group-oriented country, and so if you're a little bit different, you're a foreigner, then it's hard. And for me, I never fit into the Japanese box. I'm big, fat, and talk a little bit unnecessarily. And so it was hard for me, but that was okay. They put me in this other box, and I'll never be in the box. My wife, she's cute and quiet and kind of knows when it's appropriate to say things, and so she was in the box, and I was outside the box. And they accepted that. Japanese are very hardworking people. They work all the time. I often would see them going to work at 6:37 in the morning, and then they come home they get out of work about 8:30, and then they'll go to the bars usually, and then they'll stumble home about 10, 11, 12, and then get on the train and do it all over again. So it's a very, work ethic is very important. Make it look hard. Always never be the first one to leave the office. You have to wait till the boss leaves the office, and then everybody follows. And so when I worked in the send office, we didn't wait for the boss. She would never leave anyway. So we just leave whenever it's time to go. And so it was a little bit American. And they have proverbs in Japan, and they have one about Mount Fuji. And an idiot is someone who has not climbed Mount Fuji, and an idiot is someone who has climbed up Mount Fuji twice. And so it's an encouragement to at least climb it once. But if you climb it more than once, you're stupid. You know, so I'm in the category. I've climbed Mount Fuji once, and that's good enough. And climbing Mount Fuji is a challenge. You drive halfway up, and then you park your car, and then you start at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and you climb all night, and you have 10 stations. So you drive up to the 5th station, and you walk up to the 10th stations to the very top, and you're climbing up there they only open Mount Fuji for a month and a half in August and half of July. And your goal is to get to the top of Mount Fuji to be the first one in Japan to see the sunrise. So that as the sun rises, you can, and unfortunately for Japan, they do it because it's a religious thing. They want to worship the sun, so they can be the first one up to worship the sun. We just think it's cool if we can get it up there. The one time I did it, it's a pretty good climb. It's not to be sneezed at, but you're also climbing with, I think it's at least fair to say 50,000 people are climbing it every day. And so part of the challenge is there's 6 people wide going up the one path. And so some place it narrows down to one person, so you have to wait for the queue to empty, you know. And then you get to the very top, and there's a vending machine. There's a phone. The other side of the mountain, there's a caterpillar that goes up and down every day with the supplies and stuff. So it's not as civilized. It's a very tourist trap. But and in Japan, you have these long greetings. And beginning of the year, end of the year, you go to your friends, you make a greeting and saying it's been good being friends this year. And then at the January 1, you come to church And everybody's a new friend, and you have to do this greeting. You say it everywhere you meet, and it literally means let's be friends this year too. So it's kind of the beginning and an ending. So you end the year, you're not friends. Beginning of the year, you got all your new friends, and you have to do this comment for about 2 weeks. To the delivery guy, everybody you meet, I really took it to an extreme. I even did to the vending machine, the convenience store workers that I knew, and they have, if you say that phrase, they have to say the reply back, and so it's the same thing. You got to say the same thing back, and so this whole phrase, the young people just say "akeyo." It's shortened everything to just, okay, let's get over with it, and now we can be friends again this year. So Japanese is very complex, and that is a very formal phrase, and so young people don't want to go that formal. So why are missionaries like cow manure? So oftentimes we'll come to a missions conference, and there's reasons that they have missions conferences so short. Because if you spread them around, they make good things grow, but if you pile them up, they just stink. So missionaries, we tend to, it's good to have mission conferences, but it's only good to have them up for 2 or 3 days, because you get a bunch of missionaries together, we all kind of stink, and it's a bad joke. But after the earthquake in Japan, Send International had all of their missionaries in Tokyo, and the earthquake happened about 3-4 hours to the north. And so now we have 1/3 of our missionaries are up there, and the other 2/3 are still in Kanto in the Tokyo area. So I feel like the earthquake, the good thing that came out of it is a lot of missionaries that were so much focused on Tokyo are now spread out farther. So we're like manure in a bigger area. So it's a opportunity to share the good news in a wider area. So we were not, and to be honest, before the earthquake, this place up north, we weren't able to even get there as missionaries. They wouldn't rent houses to you, but because of the earthquake, we were able to, they saw what missionaries do and how they helped rebuild Japan. So now we're able to rent houses and live up there, which before was a challenge. So it's a good thing that came out of the earthquake. And religions in Japan, there are 2 main religions. There's Shintoism. Shintoism is originally from Japan, and everything is a god. Shintoism is Mount Fuji is a god. Half of the mountain is a god. By the way, half of Mount Fuji is a female. The other half is a male. And there's on top of every mountain is a idol. That's Shintoism. And then there's trees. Everything is a god, and they have this belief there's over 20 million gods. And so my daughter Anna went to kindergarten, and even at a Christian school, all the kids were looking around, looking at the ants. And my daughter, being the foreigner, she just jumped in there and just started stomping on the ants. And the kids were horrified. They said, "You're stepping on God's creation." So I've been where Bible studies where there's a spider or something, and they will go and stop the Bible study, get the little bug to walk on a piece of paper, and then they walk it out and shove it out the door, because you don't want to kill that. I think it's God's creation again. And where in America, whoever's got the fly swatter just bam, slams it, and we just keep moving on, And that's would not be favorable if you did that in Japan. Your witness would not be good, even in the Christian environment. But yet there's things like termites. They have no problem killing a termite because they ruin their houses or whatever. So it's kind of interesting how they don't use a lot of spray to kill insects and stuff. So, and then they have Buddhism, and that came from China and around the 6th century. And then today they have Buddhism and Shinto together. And so when you ask a Japanese what religion, they'll say both. And when you tell them about Jesus, you say, "Oh, I'll become a Christian too." And so often Japanese will want to become a Christian, but we have to, and we let them, if they want to become a Christian, we won't stop them, but we want to make sure that are they also Shinto and Buddhist. So often Japanese will accept Christ, but they will wait to baptize them until you find out more information about what are they doing with their God shelf back home. Are they still worshiping Buddhism and Shintoism? And we want to make sure that's clear that Jesus is the one way and the only way. And so that's why sometimes it says it takes, 7 years from the Japanese, from they hear the gospel to the time that they respond, because we want to make sure that they understand what the gospel is. And the word for God in Japanese is kami. And so kami-sama is also the word that the Buddhists and Shinto use for God. So if you believe in kami-sama, well, what does kami-sama mean to them? And so that's why discipleship is so important in Japan, because you want to make sure they believe in the one true God and not their idols or whatever they have. And they'll have idols in their house where they'll put oranges and still ancestor worship and things like that. And they believe that if they pray, they can keep their ancestors out of hell, and so they got to make sure that's clear. I've been in a couple times where they did do a God shelf burning, and that's kind of fun to be a part of, where they will take their gods, and often they will just go to another family member, but if the family members don't want the God shelf, us missionaries are very happy to burn their idols for them. But you don't want to do it lighthearted. You got to make it a ceremony, and so you go to the camp and you have everybody stand in a circle and you kind of pray, that release the spirits, or kind of this is a generic prayer, and burn it and move on. It's for them, it's very important. For me, it's like burning wood, but for them, it's a big deal to get rid of their gods. And so in Japan, there's only about 0.3% evangelical, but we believe that God can still, he wants Japan to believe, and we need more laborers, and we need to have people to go out there and share the good news. And we're glad that we could be a part of that. And so Japan, interesting, is the second largest unreached people group in the world. And the only reason that is because Japan is all kind of one language, and so it becomes a big country that is still unreached. And it's also the largest unreached nation that are open to missionaries. So it is very easy to get in Japan as a visa. We have religious activities visas to get in, and so it's easy to get in, but it's hard to stay and see them make conversions to Christ. But it's challenging. And the alphabet in Japanese is challenging. There are 3 main alphabets. There's hiragana, katakana, and then so the 2 left are the hiragana and katakana. So all the words in Japan, if the word comes from another country, they put it in one alphabet. If it's a word that's originally from Japan, it's in one alphabet, another alphabet, and then they throw in the Chinese kanji of thousands of characters, and I could read the 2 alphabets, but not the one from China. There's too many characters. But the sounds are all the same. It's a, I, U, E, O, Kaki, Kuke, Ko, Sashi, Suse, So. And it's all the same soundings, but how you read it is different. And but 100% of the Bible has been translated to Japanese. And in the Bible itself, you'll see all 3 different alphabets. And so one of the challenges at 52 years old is the Chinese kanji have this hiragana right next to it. And so in church, I'm using a mic thing to make it bigger because I can't read that. And my stress in life is, please don't pick on me to read the Bible and out loud, because I read it like a kindergartner and everybody doesn't enjoy it. So I've known missionaries that will preach all their life in Japan and not be able to read very well Japanese. And I've seen it done very well where they'll say, oh, we're going to read John 3:16 now. John, why don't you read John 3:16? And they're illiterate, basically, but they were able to make everybody think they know Japanese. But the fact is they can't read it. And so they have ways, just like we have people in America that are illiterate, but they have a way to get around it. I've seen missionaries that can't read, and that's almost me, where I'm almost illiterate. I can get by, I can read it privately, but don't let me read in public. It's kind of embarrassing. But that's the challenges. So we've been in we attended this church, Nishibori Christ Gospel Church, for 11 years, and it was a great experience. We loved the people, about 100 people, so it was a pretty big church for Japan. But it got to the point where our daughters we were forcing them to go to church and Sunday school, and my daughter Anna, she would just stare at the wall because she didn't understand what was going on in Sunday school. Well, she understood, but she knew that it was kind of boring or whatever. I don't know how much she understood, but we were seeing their faith in Christ kind of getting weaker and weaker, and so we decided in 2020 to start going to a different church, and that one is at the school where they were going to, Kudame Bible Fellowship, and it was more of an international church. And so we wanted our girls to have a better church experience. We wanted their faith to be their own, and so we started attending Kudame Bible Church Fellowship in 2020. Well, guess what happened in 2020? There's this thing called COVID started. And so as soon as we made the transition to this new church, they went online for over a year. And so even though we were just 5 minutes away from the church, we were staying at home, and so we were still doing worship at home, but we would join them online. But then that gets kind of boring because we don't know them very well. And so we started listening to different churches in America just to get the kids interested. And a couple times, I'll be honest, I watched the live stream here, but that is at 12 at night, midnight. And I would stay on for about 3 minutes. And I'd say, okay, I can't stay here forever. I don't know. It seemed like during COVID, God just always woke me up at midnight. And so I'd go wake up, and they're on Facebook or Hebron Bible Church. And so I'd listen to it for a little bit and go back to bed. So right now, there's 12 o'clock in the morning there. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. So, but after this church here just sent out an email 3 weeks ago that masks were now optional. So they've been wearing masks this whole 3 years. And so that was another adjustment. The Japanese love their masks. And so the school where the girls went to for 3 years have had to play basketball, everything wearing a mask. And my favorite, the funniest thing was when they were playing volleyball, they were ball washers. And so in between plays, there were people with kind of this towel, and they'd wipe the ball back, and they had a cycle of balls to play volleyball. Is how legalistic they were putting this clean, because we didn't know what COVID was like. And so just like America, in May 8, they're releasing all COVID, whatever. They're saying it's just like the flu, and so it is getting better there. But we came back in June 23. We went straight from Tokyo to Elbing, Kansas. And we've been living in this house for 9 years. And so we're able to put all our stuff in storage. And somebody moved in the day after we moved out. And it was hard to move out of a house. You've been in that for 9 years and a lot of junk. And so my daughter up there, we put up all our stuff in storage. Well, that's where our stuff is today. And so one of my jobs when we were in Japan, I was a treasurer for the mission for Japan, and we had about 62 missionaries. And so I became the professional open the bank accounts. So you go to the post office, and I became really good at opening bank accounts and registering people at City Hall. And why was I good at it if my Japanese is so bad? Is because I have the ability to play the damsel in distress, and they will go to a Japanese worker, and they will fill the form out for you. If you have a Japanese person go with you, they'll throw it back at you and say, you don't know. You do it. You know how to read it. And I'll say, I don't know how to do it. So I did it for about 30 missionaries at least, to the same post office, this little post office. I'd bring more people every time, and I knew exactly what they wanted and when they wanted it. And so I was able to open a lot of bank accounts. And I did a lot of airport runs, picking up people from the airport. And another opportunity I had was I knew a guy named Mark Beto. He was from Minnesota. And he got in with a Costco over there. And he would go every Thursday, and they had this day-old bread. And so he did this every week. And he'd get this whole carload full of bread for free. And he got tired of his friends didn't want that much bread, so I drove the hour to Costco. By the way, an hour It took me at least an hour and a half to get there. It's 10 miles away, but it took an hour to get there because the roads are so narrow. And I'd get a whole carload of bread, bagels and donuts and all this stuff, and I'd give it away to people in our area. And so I became known as the bagel guy, and I'd send out a text and send everybody. But the problem with giving away bread to missionaries is that pretty soon they'll say, do you have the sesame bagels or the cinnamon bagels? And they start getting picky. And if it's just the sesame, they won't come over. They want the blueberry ones are a popular one. So the problem with feeding the hungry is they get picky. And it's still free. I just wanted to get it out of my house so that it gets old. And so that was one of my ministries. The bottom building on the left is the building where I worked out of. That's the Sun International headquarters. The first floor is a church. The second floor is the office, which is up there. And then the third and fourth floor are the guest houses. And so I became, middle of COVID, I lost my guest house manager, so I became the guest house manager. And so I had 5 apartments that they learned very quickly that I'm not a cleaner. And so I had that hired out, but I had to manage it and make sure everybody could get in the building. And so it's a big ministry to have. It's a very important ministry to have a guest house. And so it was a great place to help missionaries. And there's about 62 missionaries plus kids and family. It's a pretty good group. And I did that for 9 years. I helped people move. I refused. I'm a Mennonite. And so Japanese will hire moving companies. And so I became really good at renting trucks and moving people ourselves. And it didn't take me very long to realize that let the young guys move the refrigerators. I don't need to move refrigerators after a while. And so, but we moved a lot of people. And then trying to buy cars and make sure they're all good, and maintenance on the guest house. And I help manage 9 houses that Send owns. And so, I'm in charge of millions of dollars, but yet the hot water heater would break and I'd have to immediately respond. And sometimes the sinner in me says, I don't care if you don't have hot water, but they do. So I have to stop whatever I do and take care of those needs and find somebody. I didn't do the work myself, but find somebody to go do it. And so help missionaries was what we did. And my wife also, she had a heart. So I did a lot of contracts, a lot of to help people get apartments. I was good at meeting realtors, and we'd get the contract signed, and just did a lot of different administrative work for churches. I did have some Japanese guys that I met with. Here's 2 of them, Kanazawa-san and Tsune Izumi-san. And Kanazawa-san's a Christian, and Tsune Izumi-san's definitely not. And they would get together and share their faith with each other. Or Kanazawa-san would share his faith. And then I was the third token, and so I didn't understand their Japanese. And so they'd start talking, and then they'd dumb down their Japanese where I could understand, and then they go back to their complex Japanese. And I still text them at least once a week. And they still don't, the guy in the pink shirt, he still doesn't have a faith, and I'm hoping to meet him this summer. And he's 78 years old, and the other one's like 75. They're neat guys. I really enjoy. And then another Japanese, I had another teacher, Kazama-san, and he was an interesting guy. He didn't have a TV, he didn't have a phone, he didn't have a computer, so he was really hard to get a hold of. But I think God has a heart on him, and when he dies, he wants his ashes to be spread around Africa. And he doesn't have any kids, any family, so he thinks his nephew will do it. I'm thinking, are you sure your nephew will fly to Africa to get rid of your ashes? It's kind of an interesting. He admires me for my faith. He keeps saying that. I wish I had faith like you. And I said, well, you can have faith, But he just thinks that when you die, you go to nothing. And so that's his viewpoint. So my beautiful wife has a ministry with young ladies and ladies in the mission and Japanese, and she was the area women's director, and so she was involved in helping the women. She did a lot of planning events and teas and encouragement. And then my daughter Clara, she went to school there, in international school, and she made a lot of good friends. And then Karen made friends with their parents, and so we're gonna So she did my wife did a lot of helping with the ladies, and I planned the men's retreats, she did the women's retreats, and she did a lot with the Christian Academy in Japan. She was the minister on the leadership there, and so challenges of a international school in Japan is that it's often thinks how to get money, and so what percentage do you allow non-Christians into a Christian school is a challenge, is all. And so just a lot of, and then Anna, my oldest daughter, she went to, there's more pictures of our younger daughter. And John Brown University is where she's at today. She is a sophomore, and she is studying kinesiology, which is the way the body moves, and she wants to be like athletic trainer, perhaps more into research. She just loves it out there, and she has, I can't say this out loud, she has a BF and a boyfriend. And it's a hard thing as a father to see. He's a great guy. So as a father, I'm adjusting to that idea. They've been dating for 1.5 years, and this thing's live streamed, so she might be watching. So in Japan, here in Hebron, you all come by car or maybe walk, but in Japan, you also have what they call crowded trains. And so let's see if this thing will start. Can you hit play maybe on it? Oh.
It's not like a subway, or is that
It's a typical train. They also have subways, trains. There we go. So this is a typical train out in Tokyo. People would get every 3 minutes a train like this would come in, and they would people would get to their workplaces or whatever. So every 3 minutes there's a train like that in Tokyo, and I was on trains like that, and very quiet. People don't talk on the trains, and the thing I remember is smells. There's a lot of smells that are associated with that many people. You smell their breakfast. You smell if they smoke tobacco just before getting on. And then sometimes they don't fit on the train, so you get these train pushers. They're there from like 7 in the morning till 9 in the morning, and they push you on, make sure you get on. And then in 3 minutes it'll stop at the next stop, and they'll all come out again and get pushed back on. And so it's the challenges of living in Japan. And the most, I think one time I counted 8 people touching me at the same time. And at some point you're trying to hold on to the strap, but sometimes the trains are so crowded you don't even need the straps because you're not going anywhere. So, but the smells, you can't forget the smells. And then on rainy days, everybody's carrying their wet umbrellas yet, and so they're trying to hold that on there. And if we have our girls on that, we would never let them be. You have to quickly pick them up. And then if you have strollers, you have to quickly fold them up and have it next to you because it's so crowded. And it's something that didn't bring me a lot of joy, but I would do it by myself. But to take the family, you'd often try to wait till at least 9 o'clock in the morning to let the crowds go before it's still crowded, but not this crowded. So for the last 18 years, we've been in Japan as business manager. I was business manager for about 9 years. And when we got to the end of getting ready for home service, I was trained a girl named Tiffany to take over as treasurer, and she was learning my position. I realized that I needed to do something different. This is kind of like this big dark cave. I felt like I needed light. I needed to do something different, but I didn't know what that was. And so I trained Tiffany. I needed to give my job out to like 2-3 people. And so that's what happened. Getting ready for home service, I was able to get a guy named John to take over the housing responsibility and Tiffany to do the financial people. And so when we left, we didn't know what we were going to do. And so I said we went to Kansas and we looked at a lot of sunsets and we prayed. And at that point, we talked to Send and what kind of jobs do we have available. And that's when several offers were made of different jobs within Send, and some required a lot of traveling, some didn't. And so the one job that we felt really God calling us to is to be the international. So I've been asked to be, Send made a position for me, And the treasurer of Send International in the international office is in Michigan. They have a treasurer, and she's super busy. And so I'm going to become her assistant. And she lives in Michigan part of the time, Myrtle Beach the other time of the week with her parents. And so it's a virtual position. And so she asked me to be her assistant. And so I will be serving as Assistant International Office Treasurer. And I'm pretty excited about it. So then we thought, well, go back to Japan and we'll do it from there. And that's when Sen pointed out that we need to deal with the financial banks a lot. And trying to do it through VPN with the banks doesn't work real well. And so we need to be in America to do this. And that was a couple of months right there praying, God, we've been in Japan. Why would we not go back to Japan? Because that's what we always were going to do. But we felt like God really prompting us to, first of all, Clara was doing really good at her school in Elbin, Kansas. She's got some learning disabilities, and it just was really, she was thriving there. And then this thing called aging parents, and mine's in Minnesota, and it's tough to be back so far away. And so then Sen is saying we really would prefer that we stay in the States. And we said to Sen, can we stay in Kansas? And they said, we can stay anywhere. And so we are going to stay in Kansas, and I'm going to be serving starting in August to be this assistant treasurer, which is basically helping 450 missionaries and the treasurers of all these countries. So I'll be learning, I've been doing QuickBooks, so I'm learning another accounting program that they're going to do. And basically, I just need an internet connection and a phone, and be able to do most of everything. I will be able to do everything virtually. So I could have done it in Japan, but it's going to be easier if I stay in the States. So we are in the process of buying a house at 52 for the first time, and so hopefully here in the next 60 days we're going to be closing. And we have purchased airline tickets, so if the three of us, Karen and Claire and I, are going to go back to Japan this summer, and we're going to clean up our junk, all that storage stuff we put in there. We have about 3 weeks to get rid of that stuff. So we're going to have to sort that in a hot, humid warehouse, and how to find a home for all that stuff will be our challenge. But we're excited about it, and be able to help missionaries worldwide. So a lot of the needs right now is helping Ukraine. We have a lot of money that came in for Ukraine help, so they're sending money, and that is sent from here in the States. We send $250 to all these families that need help in Ukraine, and that's originating here in America. So I'll be able to help with those kinds of activities. I'm excited about being part of the bigger picture of Send and be able to. And what my wife's going to do, we're still working that out. She's still she's doing online classes with Moody, and she'll be getting her bachelor's here pretty soon. And then after that, she's going to look and see what she wants to do. And so we're excited about staying back, but yet sad. Why do we want to? We've been in Japan all our lives. Why would we want to do something different and then go to small town Whitewater where everybody talks to everybody, and it's and so it's got their challenges, but God knows what he's doing. We trust God that, and a lot of people said, don't go, if you leave Japan, you're not going to get your support. You're going to drop. Well, we've had some people drop. But we're like, okay, if God has provided 100% of our support for 18 years, why can't we trust God in this field as well? So it's been a challenge of faith, like, okay, God's going to take care of us, and so we can trust God to know what he's doing. And he's always taken care of us in the past. Why would we say he's not going to take care of us when we stay in the States? And so excited that we can bring missions to the U.S. so they can come see, I'm trying to find an office yet in Kansas so that I can get away from the house. For marriage, 24 years of marriage, my wife doesn't like having me at home. Home service is I'm at home all the time, and every 15 minutes I go check on her, and she doesn't like that. And the other distraction is, the dishwasher needs to be emptied, and I better do that. And then pretty soon, you forgot, I got to go back to work. So I'm learning from my own personality, it's better to go find an office, and so I'm trying to still locate that, but we know God will provide. So let's pray, and then worship is going to start here pretty soon. God, we just thank you that you have taken care of us for the last 18 years, and Japan is a country that needs you and desperately needs you. And we know and excited that there are new missionaries going to Japan, excited that we can be a part of it. Thank you that this church can be praying for us and praying for other missionaries around the world, and how important that is. We just thank you for this opportunity to be here this morning, and pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Yes. Wasika, I'm not sure. We're between Worthington and Mankato. It's Mountain Lake on Highway 60. So Wasika, I think, is a little bit up north. So, very good.